Hello, my name is Ruth Nelson, and welcome to this week's Master Coaches Weekly Buzz, hosted by our friend John Foreman. He's held on to us for 19 straight weeks. Our most recent interviews with four-time national champion Nebraska head coach John Cook and three-time SEC champion Kentucky head coach Craig Skinner provide us a great update on the most recent NCAA decisions and what effect those decisions have on the upcoming season. We have a newsflash. Newsflash is AD podcast had 7 athletic directors on the podcast across the country, and they discussed how they are handling adjustments to game day protocols as fall competition begins. Check out coachesinsider.com for more info and stay up with high school volleyball. Go to nfhs.org, and for junior club volleyball, go to jvavolleyball.org and sign up for Dig These Tips. Now, did you know Brian Gemolero has over 800 wins in 32 years at the same university that he received his undergraduate degree? Bob Bertucci has over 900 wins in 41 years at 6 different D1 programs. And Mick Haley has over 1,300 wins in 41 years at 3 different programs. All will be asking our guests the tough questions on ACC and SEC volleyball season preparations, as well as how each program is moving forward with COVID-19 this fall. First, let's go to former Olympic coach Mick Haley, who will introduce our guest today.
Well, thank you, Ruth. Before I do that, I'm going to introduce you a little bit, but I didn't do my homework. I didn't see how many wins you have, but people should know that you're a former national team player, national team assistant coach, head coach at 3 NCAA Division I universities, LSU, Houston, and Iowa, and now doing some of the most formidable work with youth volleyball in the country. So you don't get to just introduce us and get off free here. As far as our guests for today, though, Chris Poole and Tom Black, really excited to have both of you on board. Chris is ranked fourth among active Division I coaches in wins with 843. And Chris, I'm sorry to say that I was surprised. I didn't realize you were getting to be a veteran. I remember when you were at Arkansas because we got to play you a little bit. But wow, these wins are accumulating fast and furious. I see you've gone 11 straight times to the NC2A tournament with Florida State, and it seems like everywhere you go, you have a golden touch here at getting winning programs. Tom Black, we go way back. Tom was an assistant on the men's team when I was at USC and got to see him from very young age start, and he's been doing great. He's in 4th year of Georgia. And Tom, it reminds me of Jim Imes' teams, the way you've come on with 20-game winning seasons. 2 of your 3 seasons have been 20-game winning seasons so far. So congratulations on that. We're pretty excited. You also double as the Canadian women's national team coach. And sometime, I guess off camera, I'd like to talk to you on how you balance that. But that's a pretty good trick, and you've done a pretty good job. So to both of you, welcome. I've got to shoot real quick into this first question because we want to keep going here. Both of you are being touted as big picture thinkers by your peers, which is really, I think, a really great pat on the back. We feel we need more people like you two, to present opinions and options to what is being printed in the papers and voiced on the social media chats. We need that all through our country, leadership. Chris, what prompted you to do the research that you've been doing and sharing with so many of your peers?
Well, first, thank all of you, and I feel like I'm among legends here with on this call, and I appreciate that. And I even go back further with you, Mick. We were on a committee together back when I was at Arkansas State. And I don't know if you remember that or not. It was a regional committee, but I was just a young lad back then, and that was back in '87, '88. But I.
Oh, me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think as we were going through the spring, particularly in April and May, I saw a lot of frustration among coaches, and again, if you've been coaching, my actual first college job was 1983. So I went in from the AIAW into the NCAA. I was part of that during that transition from college into coaching. And so I know a lot of people around the country, and in just talking to friends, I could see the frustration. I could hear the frustration. And part of that was, obviously, no one knew. There's not a book. There's not a rule book for how do you play sports during a pandemic. And so I think there was a lot of confusion. I think the fact that they needed to be putting their emphasis on football, and we all understand that. There's not a volleyball coach in the country that would say they should have pushed football aside and brought forth volleyball, because we all recognize that's the economic engine for us. But what I really wanted to do is just try to have a platform nationally. And so I started reaching out to friends, and before I knew it, I was finding that I had friends pretty much in every conference that I'd either coached with or that I'd coached against or that had been on committees. And so that was really my start in just trying to get people to open up, because I think if you're being told, let's wait until we get football figured out and then we'll look at volleyball, is very frustrating for volleyball coaches that typically want to be part of the solution. They want to be able to come up with ideas and have a voice as well. And so I tried to provide that by reaching out to coaches and saying, what would you guys look for? What are you doing right now? What is your conference doing right now? And started getting ideas of what they were thinking they were going to have to do in the fall. And this was all happening in the month of May, really, May and June. And then as the summer progressed, obviously things began to change at different times. And so we just reached out even more. So that's how it started. And trying to throw around ideas that, look, if we get to the point to where they're ready to say, volleyball, you're next, now what? And so I think we were pushing out options for maybe weeks, options of how we might do it, where it might fit in the spring calendar, and things like that is what we were trying to provide. And those begin to leak to administrators, and those begin to leak into the NCAA. And next thing you knew, it was, lots of people were talking back and forth, which was really my intention to start with.
And you didn't leak those on purpose, right?
No.
Well, thanks. And I really want to give you a compliment here, because getting people to think on their own and go off and do this is really admirable, because most people are so unsure. They don't want to make a misstep. They don't want to get in a bad light. And the way you've gone after this, I know there's a million people out there that really appreciate your effort. Tom, your fellow coaches in the SEC have told me that you've been one of the most creative thinkers on the conference coaches calls. Can you share with us an idea of how you see some opportunities available in this pandemic time that might better help us through these tough months and weeks and hopefully not years?
We must have caught them on a good day. I've heard other adjectives about me, so I'm glad.
Well, it is depending on who you talk to. I know.
Fair enough. At least I'm self-aware enough to react. Yeah, well, I thought Chris did a phenomenal job with those emails. It was awesome, and he was clearly trying to link every volleyball coach in the country into as collaborative a process as possible. And yeah, it wasn't anything secret. I think kind of like everyone here, I mean, I'm looking to grow the game. I think volleyball is unique in our country, where the amount of participation throughout our country in our sport isn't anywhere represented on the same level through the media. And I mean, we all have different thoughts on that. So there's really a combination of, okay, we're in a crisis. I think it'd be awful if there's no season, for either as a sport or I think it's terrible for a team or a conference not to have a season. So how can we have a conference? And then anytime there's a constraint, there's an opportunity behind it, right? So is there some opportunity within this situation to grow our game and save this season? So I was just kind of looking at it through that lens. So, we had different ideas at different times, and I've definitely learned a lot through this process, but I think that's kind of where my mode of thinking was.
Well, again, same thing. When the older coaches compliment you for speaking up in your conference and showing leadership in that regard, that's certainly a nice compliment and something you have to appreciate. I have one second question, and this is really a fastball. This is a little harder question, so I'll let you fight over who wants to take it on first. But my second question for both of you would be, if universities start furloughing coaches like they have been other what they call non-essential personnel, could you see the need for a coaches union for all collegiate coaches?
Chris, you've been around longer. You want to go first?
Thanks, Tom. I think that's an interesting point. I think that certainly as we are moving through some of the issues that we've had this summer, and I think seeing some of the decisions that are having to be made, forced to be made, and coaches needing to come together and trying to provide leadership and a voice, I think that's where something like that could be important. It's not something that I've been approached on, and it's not something that I've even talked to anyone with. So I would have to hear more details and things like that, but it's an interesting point, certainly, because I do think that there was a lot of coaches who just felt either their voices wasn't being heard, or we were just everything was just on pause, and nobody really knew what was going to happen. And there wasn't ideas coming out yet because there wasn't things that people were ready to relay to others at that point.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't really have a simple answer. I have an agent, Gary Rosenfeld, and he's great. He represents a lot of other coaches, and I think that's going to continue to keep growing as time goes on. I think it kind of ties in the original answer. I don't know how effective a coaches union for volleyball is going to be until our sport gets on a higher profile. Because I think one of the challenges you face, colleges absolutely are very aggressive about having lawyers draft the contracts that are given to you, but if you try to insert representation on your side, it's not so received, even though it doesn't make any sense. And I think part of it's because our sport's considered a certain profile where they don't maybe feel like they have to deal with that. So I can see some beneficial things with it, but I think it would have its most effectiveness if our sport grew at a profile that made people have to deal with it, if that makes sense.
Well, according to the newspapers, this is being a kind of a grumble with football coaches.
Right, exactly.
If we did a coaches union, I don't think it could be sports specific. I think it would have to be a coaches union for all sports. That's where you get your strength. So might give some people a chance to think their way through that a little bit. And maybe we could get Gary Rosenfeld on here next week and talk a little bit about that. I know Gary, so I'll give him a call. Bob Bertucci has he's been flashing my light here. He's trying to get in with a question. So Bobby, take it over.
All right, well, I'll start with Tom first, but this is a question for both Tom and Chris. Just getting a little bit more specific to what the situation is right now, and we know that costs are a big concern for all athletic departments, all universities. What do you think the possibility of conference realignments happening either just temporarily or, moving forward as a way to save funds?
Well, first of all, Bob, I want to thank you for going to the men's side. I'm trying to count how many times I've lost to Mick and Brian, and it's getting to you, so I'm just thankful that I don't have to play you too. So, I think that's a great idea. My gut is with the Power 5, it's probably not going to happen too much, but Chris could speak a lot more to the ACC, but I think we're going to see a lot more pressure to do that in preseason for sure over the next couple of years. But I can't see the SEC at least shifting that way. And we're in a tough spot with volleyball because Vanderbilt doesn't have a team, so we have 13 teams. So there's only so much we can do. I think if Vanderbilt had a team, we'd be a lot more flexible with that. And I know the ACC's already done a ton of stuff, so maybe Chris can speak to that more.
Yeah, I think that, mention the regional, and we've been told by our administrators that this likely is not just a one-year thing. This may take a couple of years to get back out of it, to recover out of it. So I think there's going to be, at the very least, some regionalization from a non-conference standpoint. I'm not sure they're going to want us just going everywhere, and if we can save a little bit of money by aligning and being able to play. And I know Tom and I we were planning on playing this fall, and that's that again, I think for me and my location, and actually the SEC and the ACC together, there would be some crossover that could be played among schools easily, and for me, it may be LSU and Florida and Georgia and Alabama and Auburn that are all around me. And then Tom would have some that out of the ACC that's up there around him. So I think there's going to be some of that that's going to go on at least for the next, at the bare minimum, for another year. And it could be another couple of years before we fully get ourselves back on track the way we were. I mean, we were just a train headed down the track, and now that track's been blown up, and we're having to go a different direction right now and try to figure out how to make it work to where the student athletes still have a great experience, which is the number one thing to accomplish that, is make sure that we're playing competitive teams, that we're being allowed to play a schedule, and it may be look a little more regional.
Yeah, can I add to that? That kind of ties into the first question about just opportunities through all this. I don't know how many television networks are saying we got to show more volleyball, but I think they're all thinking we want to show compelling TV. We want to show something that's, interesting. And I thought one thing this brought to light was that there's so many more opportunities to do conference crossover matches at different parts of the series, to have like tournaments within tournaments, rather than just playing like 12 preseason games that really don't make any sense to people that don't know volleyball. And I really hope we could take the bull by the horns. I mean, there's all these preseason tournaments that are, if you're a diehard volleyball fan, they're great, but they don't make sense to the layperson nearly as much as an ACC SEC challenge does. And that's good for the sport. And TV is very open if it makes sense to them. But I think we need to create packages that do make sense to them, and that'll help grow the game a ton.
So maybe the alignment would be more of a regional mix of conferences, especially in the preseason, is what I'm hearing you guys say right now.
Well, I think, sorry if I can keep going. I think when you're talking about football or basketball, I think in general, it's how do we market this sport, and then is there a cost-efficient way to do it? And I think with volleyball, it's like, what's the most cost-efficient way to run this sport, right? That's fine if you're just trying to save money, but that's not going to grow any model. So I think somehow we have to get, for sure, you always got to be cost-efficient, but can we package this better? Can we be, do we just have to keep doing this 30-game season that only makes sense to people who already follow the sport, or can we create packages that garner some more outside interest? So I think there's a way to do that. If we're playing, like Chris was saying, if we're playing Florida State and Georgia Tech, it's not adding to the budget, but that's a lot more compelling TV if we package it the right way.
Right. Well, how about what's the truth of the rumors that the NCAA might recommend a reduced championship bracket for this spring? Chris, have you heard anything about that?
I have, and I mean, I think that is being floated out there quite a bit. I think that there's been some pushback to how small that might be, but I know that there's been some of the others, particularly the conferences that have already moved to the spring. Obviously, they're really fighting to have as big as possible. So I think they floated the idea of smaller just to see kind of what that would feel like. I feel like that now it would probably be, and this is just my opinion, probably minimum 32, but I know there's still others that are fighting for, getting a 64. And there's even been some ideas floated that, maybe the first two rounds, the schools are having to pay for their testing. Because I know that's part of it is that they add more teams, there's more cost. So how do we take care of that cost? So there's been some that have said, well, look, allow the 16, but maybe they're paying their, for the first two rounds, everyone's paying for their own testing, and then it gets picked up in the Sweet 16 by the NCAA or something like that. So I think there are different things that could potentially happen that would still allow those numbers. And I think volleyball coaches would be reasonable that way. We would rather see opportunity, not cut the teams out of it. We'd rather see opportunities for teams to be able to go, because we know that helps the sport grow.
Tom, you could relate to this a little bit, being in both men's and women's volleyball over your career. We on this show, we've kind of put out there a couple of times what Chris had just mentioned about keeping the women at 64, but having the first two rounds being paid for by the schools. And then as we move forward, just combining the men and women's championship this spring. I think that could be a win-win for the NCAA and for volleyball in general. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea, and I guess I'll start with a positive. I think I think the decisions the NCAA made over the past couple of weeks were the best decisions they could in the situation. It's going to be complicated handling it, but I thought they were giving everyone as much flexibility as they could. Other than that, I think I'm in the minority on this one, but I think one of the big mistakes in all of this has been giving the NCAA as much weight in our decision making as we have. I just have no faith that they're going to pull off a tournament. I think we're going to be waiting forever. I think it's going to be the most inefficient process. And meanwhile, conferences are hanging on the ledge, and everybody's eligibility has been given back. And I really think the priority has to be on giving the student athletes the best competitive experience we possibly can, and then hoping the NCAA pulls something off. But I just have no faith in that tournament happening in a way that allows us to structure a good season around it. And I think it's a mistake to keep waiting around their decisions. But I don't think I'm in the majority with that opinion. But if I was, the czar of volleyball, I would be a lot more concerned about on the beach conference, what kind of experience competitively are they providing for the student athletes this year based on the information they have.
Hey.
You guys, I was wondering how you feel about what's happening with eligibility from your coach's perspective and players. And what I'm talking about is, are people, as players opt out or can opt out, and bringing them back for a fifth year, and how is that resonating with the teams and the conferences? Tom, start with you.
Oh, that was can you say that again, just to make sure I answer correctly?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're challenged now, Brian.
Yeah, I'm actually in my car, so I hope you can hear me. When we go through this, and there's been so many decisions about eligibility.
Yeah.
And players opting out for the season, and I know October 1st is an opt-out time, but afterwards, and how many matches they can play, and still, how are your schools and your conferences looking at the possibility of eligibility after this is all over?
Yeah, well, I'm hearing lots of rumblings. I haven't heard anything definitive. I think one of the big questions is, the seniors are going to basically be allowed to play as long as they, want to play. If they want to stay for an extra year, they can have that. Everybody's been granted an extra year of eligibility, but the big rumblings, rumors, stirrings I'm hearing are what about the freshmen through the juniors and how that impacts, future recruits and classes. And I don't have any answer on that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I'm curious what Chris thinks about all of it.
Yeah, I think honestly, while I understand, I think it could be a potential nightmare in managing a roster and managing the money. So it's like they threw it. I think I understand why it was done, because they wanted to try to be fair. And I think there's an understanding that because we don't know anything about this virus, and we don't know what's going to happen during the fall, we had, if you have a player go out, they could be out for several weeks before they're finally cleared, depending on the steps that your school has in clearing them to be back in. So for us, we're going to be playing 4 weekends, 8 matches. We could have someone go out and miss 3 of those 4 weekends that's out of it. But I think the thing that's going to be telling is, I think some seniors are going to be interested in coming back. You're going to have others that are going to be at a stopping place and have already decided that next chapter in the book, and so they're going to be ready to turn that page. And I think those that are coming back, then it's going to be up to the school on do they have the money to add scholarships. And then you've got to look at your roster and you've got to decide. So I think it's going to affect. There's going to be I think unintended consequence is going to be when you suddenly see big rosters and you're trying to manage it, and freshmen that were coming in thinking, this is my chance because you're losing 5 or 6 or 7 seniors, so I get a chance to start. And now those seniors are back out there when they look up at the end of the spring, and how's that going to look? So it's going to be interesting to see how different people manage. We actually have seven players that are going to be finishing, 5 that are supposed to finish in December. And so it's, we don't know how even going into the spring, and then how that's going to work on going into the fall. So there is there is some conversations that are going to have to be had, because we can't just keep everybody. We've got to try to figure out how to do that.
And the second part of my question is, how does this all impact transferring in your mind? Is transferring going to be bigger? Is there concerns about that? What are you feeling? Either one of you.
I'm personally fascinated to see that, because I don't know if it's going to happen more. But the rule for seniors, if they stay, they count on top of your 12, right? So if you have 7 seniors or 5 seniors, you can have 12 plus that 5 or plus that 7, and it doesn't affect the other 12 scholarships. But if that kid transfers, they just go into the normal 12. So it's not like, you might be allowed 17 on your roster because it's 5 seniors, but that other school you're looking at is you be back in the 12. So and then you combine that with the financial stress of trying to cover the seniors, and I could see a huge log jam happening. I'm not sure how it's all going to play out, but it goes to how complicated Chris is talking about.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I think that you're going to see some situations to where players may decide to if they transfer, it may be a situation. Let's say you've got a senior that has earned that year back, but maybe isn't starting this year or doesn't feel they may be starting the next year. They may go, hey, this is my chance to go ahead. I've played this year, but I get it back. Can I find a school that is under that 12 limit, like you said, to where they're one of the 12? So I think there could be some transferring going on, or a coach just flat be honest with the senior and tell them that we can't handle that many, whether, again, it's budget or it's numbers management-wise, and so they choose to go somewhere else, and you wish them the best of luck. I mean, they've earned that opportunity back based on what the NCAA has given them. But so I do think there's going to be some transferring going on, and it may be simply because a player is in a position to where they feel going somewhere, maybe getting their master's or something like that is something they want to take advantage of, the way a lot of kids have been doing it with beach. They finish their indoor and then they switch and go to beach for a year to play. I think we're going to see some kids this year graduate. They have that year of eligibility that has been given back to them. So they go somewhere because they know they don't fit in the numbers or on what the coach is looking at their current school.
Okay, so I get to jump in, Brian. You guys always push me to the wire here. So first of all, Chris, we didn't decide that you were going to coordinate the coaches union, just to let you know. So you don't have to worry about us contacting you about that. However, I do want to talk briefly about recruiting. And I know a 2030 can't come on your campus and talk to you guys and jump in your practice. But my question to you is, what right now can a recruit, a 2022 or 2021, do right now on your campus?
Well, right now we're in a dead period still, so I mean they can't do anything with us being involved. Now, I suppose if they came on their own, they could come on a campus, but they wouldn't be able to meet us. They wouldn't be able to meet the team. They would, there's not anything that they can do. It's pretty much been hands off, and I feel for those 2021, 2022s. Because the timing for particularly 2022s, I mean, can you imagine it shut down a year ago because of the new NCAA rule, which didn't allow you to start your recruiting until before your junior year. So those sophomores got blocked out of this past year for the first time. And then suddenly you finally get your chance in June, and you've been blocked out since then. So that combined with the eligibility is really going to be interesting to see what happens the next 2 or 3 years. It's going to be to see how the eligibility works with players coming back and how it works as far as the young kids and the recruitment. Okay.
Hey, Tom, I'm a 2022 and I came on your campus. You don't know I'm there and you're practicing. Can I sneak in and watch your practice?
Well, you'd have to get past the medical staff first.
That's excellent. Okay, so real quick, Tom, what can you suggest to all these recruits out there? I have one last question, and it won't take but 30 seconds because you're not going to have to worry about this second question for a while. But Tom, what would you tell the recruits out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, you can still call, you can still email, you can still send video, which I think is how recruiting is going to go a lot this year too. I think there's going to be a lot more virtual recruiting than ever before. So I think might as well start.
Okay, in NIL, Mick said, do you mean NLI? I said, no, NIL, name, image, and likeness. You got to put this in your mind. You don't have to answer, but this is now coming up in 2023. So now you got to think about kids signing already. You know, they signed Under Armour and they come to your school and it's a Nike sponsorship. So those are things that are going to end up. Mick, I'm going to go to you because we are out of time.
Well, you did a great job with your time there. Maybe we should let you go first next time. That was pretty good, Ruth. Hey, guys, thanks for being on. Everybody appreciate you coming on, and the information is absolutely valuable. People listening will love this. Next week, we're going to deal with some people, have some people on that will deal with this. You know, yesterday, Texas furloughed 70 people. A couple of days ago, Texas Tech furloughed 40. Michigan's furloughed 21. We need some information on what's going to happen to coaches. Tom, you talked about Gary Rosenfield, and I will be calling him right after we get off of here to try to get him on so he can help us a little bit. But we need to know something about potential furlough situation for coaches, the developing of coaches' unions, and how to better protect ourselves with your contracts as we go forward in this. So I think that will be the focus next week. Back to you, Ruth.
Oh, yes. Fall Master Coaches virtual clinics are now available for you, your team, or your coaches for an in-person clinic in 2021. Please head over to our Instagram, VB Master Coaches, click on our bio, click on the virtual clinic link, or you may scan our QR code that will take you directly to all of our information. And join us next week for Master Coaches Weekly Buzz on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. All of our weekly Buzz shows are on YouTube, and you may access these by going directly to our Instagram account, click on the link in our bio, and enjoy listening to leaders like Chris and Tom address current issues and trends. Register by November 6th for the 2020 AVCA Virtual Convention to save $50 and get the first opportunity in small group learning and career center appointments. Remember, after our host John Foreman closes our weekly Buzz today, you can stay on Facebook Live and join us for Master Coaches Buzz Reaction for opportunity to hear and engage in our most recent talks. Now, let's go to our host, John Foreman, who will update us on his coaching conversations and update us on Medaille Mavericks. And John, by the way, we are still waiting to see your customized Maverick mask.
Might have to wait a little bit longer. Although I did have a couple of girls come into my office trying to sell me Medaille masks.
Oh,
so
all right.
I might have to prioritize. I want to thank Chris and Tom. Actually, in terms of coaching conversations, I wrote notes for conversations I might want to get you guys on different topics. So I might be reaching out, especially if we don't have seasons to deal with. But thanks everybody for turning up. Stay in touch on social media here at Coaching VB, Coaching Volleyball, on Twitter, Coaching VB, and coachingvb.com to keep up to date on coaching conversations, on future episodes of The Buzz and all that stuff. And for everybody who's leaving us now, thanks for tuning up. Thanks, guys. And for those who want to stick around to have some laughs and some additional conversation, we'll be happy to have you along.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tom.
Guys.
Good job, Chris. Good job, Tom.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.